The Cyber Operations Command Center sat 4 levels below the Pentagon, shielded by concrete, steel, and encryption protocols so dense they had their own classification tier. Tonight, the room pulsed with a sharp, metallic tension. 8 high-ranking officers, colonels, lieutenant colonels, and a brigadier general with a jaw set like granite, surrounded the central console. They had been planning this operation for 3 weeks, and now, at the critical moment, there was a complication. She stood at the edge of the room, away from the console, hands clasped loosely in front of her. Civilian attire, dark blazer, slacks. No visible identification beyond a security badge. Her expression was unreadable, eyes tracking the screens with quiet, unsettling attention. "She's going to be a problem," a colonel muttered. "If she resists, shut it down immediately," the brigadier general commanded, loud enough for the room to hear. "We can't afford delays. Not tonight." The woman didn't react. She continued watching the data streams like she was reading a language only she understood. The officers interpreted her silence as weakness, the shock of a civilian outmatched by military weight. A lieutenant colonel leaned toward his console, fingers hovering. "I'll prepare to override her credentials, just in case she tries to lock us out." "Good," the general replied. "We move in 15 minutes regardless." The woman stepped forward then, not suddenly but with a calm, measured movement. Officers tensed instinctively, hands shifting toward keyboards and phones. She stopped at the edge of the console's light. "The authorization timestamp is incorrect," she said quietly. The room paused. "What?" the general asked, irritation creeping into his voice. "The timestamp," she repeated, pointing at a line of code. "It's 8 minutes ahead of the actual operation window. If you execute now, the system will flag it as unauthorized and auto-lock the entire network." A major frowned, pulled up the details, and his face shifted. "She's right. The clock's off. How did we miss that?" "Because you were moving too fast," she said simply. "No judgment, just observation." The general's jaw tightened. "Fine, adjust it. 15-minute delay still stands." She nodded, her eyes still scanning. "There are 4 other gaps in the execution sequence," she added calmly. "We'll handle them," the general snapped. She stepped back, watching, waiting. No one realized she was already 3 steps ahead, identifying the exact moment their flaws would force them to a dead halt. The countdown began. Alpha and Bravo teams confirmed status. Satisfaction replaced tension on the general's face. Everything was aligning. "Execute on my mark. 3, 2. Pause the execution." The woman's voice cut through the countdown like a scalpel, quiet, clear, and impossible to ignore. The general's hand froze. "What did you say?" he demanded. "I said pause the execution," she repeated. "There is a critical authorization gap that will compromise the entire operation if you proceed." "You don't have that authority," a colonel bristled. Without a word, she reached into her blazer, pulled out a single folded document and placed it on the console. The paper bore seals that caught the light, culminating in a signature that made the officers recoil. The seal was unmistakable. National Security Council. Authorization level, Cardinal. The lieutenant colonel pulled his hand back from the keyboard like it was burning. The general picked up the paper, his grip crinkling the edges. "This authorization, it supersedes operational command." "Yes," she said. "Your NSC oversight." "Yes." The word landed like a depth charge. She turned to the screen. "You're routing through a compromised node. This junction was flagged as hostile 4 hours ago. If you push traffic through it, you expose the entire architecture to interception." The room went hollow. A colonel scrolled rapidly through logs, his face paling. "She's right. The flag was buried in secondary reports. We didn't cross-reference." "You didn't have time," she interrupted gently. "What do you recommend?" the general asked, the fight draining out of him. "Reroute through the backup junction. Add 17 minutes. Verify all nodes. Then proceed." "That puts us outside the optimal window," a lieutenant colonel protested. She looked at him calmly. "Better outside the optimal window than inside an enemy intercept." As the officers moved to comply, the screens began updating on their own. Network traffic shifted smoothly, permissions updated across every display. A major stared at his screen in confusion. "I didn't initiate this reroute." "Who?" "Vance Catherine. NSC oversight. Level, Cardinal." The name appeared at the top of the chain, looking as if it had always been there. "You've had system access this entire time," the general realized. "You could have stopped us the moment you walked in. Why didn't you?" I wanted to see if you would catch the problems yourselves. She met his eyes evenly. To see if authority would recognize its own limitations before they became catastrophic. And we failed, the general muttered. You were operating under pressure. That's context, she said, her fingers now flying across the console with terrifying efficiency. But yes, you missed critical elements. These are the corrected parameters. She issued instructions, precise, unemotional, final. The officers followed them immediately, not out of fear, but because the system itself now recognized her as the ultimate authority. You could have embarrassed us, the general said quietly as the new 12-minute countdown ticked away. I could have, she agreed. But then you wouldn't have learned anything. Now you know what rushed execution costs. The operation executed flawlessly. Data flowed through secure channels, and objectives were achieved without a single red flag. When the final confirmation came through, objective secure, the tension in the room finally broke. Catherine Vance stepped back, gathered her document and folded it into her pocket. She didn't wait for praise. As she walked toward the door, a colonel whispered, "She didn't fight us. She replaced us." The general caught her at the exit. "Dr. Vance, I owe you an apology. We should have listened." "You assumed I was an obstacle," she replied. "Most do until they realize I'm the solution they didn't know they needed." "Lesson learned, ma'am." "Good," she said, hand on the handle. "Because there is always a next time, General. The question is whether you'll remember this one when it arrives." The door closed quietly. The room was different now, quieter, more thoughtful. "We just watched someone take control without raising her voice once," the colonel remarked. "That wasn't taking control," a major corrected. "That was having control. We just didn't recognize it until she decided to show us."